It's story time! Alright, it's story time. And today Daddy's going to tell you the story of Babu the Hippo. I love this story because I love hippos. But I also love this story because I love Babu. Babu was very obedient and he was a really cool kid. You know, he did everything his parents told him to do, and he was like, the dream kid for every parent. Just like you are a dream kid to me, you were so good. So like that was Babu. And Babu lived in a kingdom called Palu. Alright? And this animal kingdom, Palu, there were like cheetahs and lions and elephants and leopards and all kinds of animals. And then there was hippos. And in this hippo family was where Babu was from. And Babu had so many brothers and sisters. Alright? Babu was really cool, like a cool kid. But there was something different about Babu. Babu wasn't very good in school. And so it took him a little bit longer to start speaking and even start understanding things in school. All right? And so every time they went to school and all the kids were told to introduce themselves, Babu, and it was Babu's turn to introduce himself, he would stand up and say, and the teacher would ask, "Hey Babu, what's your name? Introduce yourself to the class." And he would go, "My name is Babu, and I love orange, tomatoes, onions, blah, 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 blah." And then he would forget the words. And everybody in the class would laugh at him. Because, everybody else would introduce themselves and say things about themselves. But when it came to Babu's turn, he remembered his name, and he remembered that he loves onions and tomatoes, and then, so unfortunately, after school, all these kids would make fun of Babu and the way he talked. They would, they would mimic the way he talked, and it's not very nice to make fun of people who are struggling in an area that you might be good at. But still, these kids, they imitated Babu and how he did, and so they would go like, "Hey, my name is Babu, and I love onions, tomatoes, blah, blah, blah." It's not nice to make fun of other people, but they still did it. And this made Babu feel really bad. But when Babu went home and he told his daddy how all these kids were making fun of him because he could forget his words and he didn't really speak that well, his dad sat him down and told him, "Babu, I know these kids might be making fun of you because you cannot speak, but I'm sure there is something that God blessed you with." And Babu's dad told him, "I know one thing that you're really good at, and that's swimming." And the way it started is Babu's dad used to take Babu to the river that was really deep. And not very many animals like to go in it because it was so deep, and not a lot of them knew how to swim. But Babu's daddy had taught Babu how to swim. And Babu got really good. And so he would just, after school sometimes he would go with his dad and they would go into the water and they would swim for long distances in this river even though it was so deep. And Babu's dad knew that Babu was a really good swimmer, that he had a gift that no one else had. And so every time Babu would come home really sad that all the kids were making fun of him, Babu's dad would tell him, "Son, I know these kids might be making fun of you, and I will go talk to their parents, but you need to understand one thing, that even though you're not very good in school and you might struggle with the way you speak, God still blessed you with a gift. And I know that one thing, you're a very good swimmer. And if you concentrate on your swimming, God might open a way for you in the future, to be a swimmer, to be a lifeguard, or something like that. And so don't give up and don't feel discouraged just because you're not doing very good in school or you're not speaking that well." And so that really motivated Babu. And Babu all of a sudden stopped listening to all the kids who would make fun of him. And and even though the teacher would call on Babu and say, "Hey, Babu, introduce yourself to the class." And then Babu would go and say, "Hey, my name is Babu, and I love onions, tomatoes, and blah, blah, blah." He would forget the words. But even though all the people in the class burst out laughing, he forgot his words, Babu didn't feel bad because of he remembered what his dad told him, that just because I cannot speak very well doesn't mean that I'm not good at something else. He knew he was really good in swimming. All right? And so life went on, and Babu grew up, and he went, he went from elementary school and went to high school. All right? And one day, when Babu was swimming in the river, something happened. There was this impala, and his name was Tutu. And Tutu didn't know how to swim. All right? Tutu was walking along the river. And then he forgot to look where he was going, and he fell into the river. And when he fell into the river, the water started to drift him into the river, and he started to drown in the river. And he tried to swim, but he couldn't swim. And his friends who were walking with him, they wanted to really help him, but they couldn't jump in the river because they didn't know how to swim. And if they jumped into the river, they would all have drowned. And all the animals that were close to the river, there was no other animal that knew how to swim. But there was something. Babu was at the river that time. And when Babu saw Tutu drowning, Babu ran to the river. And Babu ran into the river. And he jumped in the river. And Babu swam. He swam close to Tutu. Tutu was asking for help. Tutu was drowning, and he was saying, help me, help me. And all his friends, they were just on the shores because they couldn't jump into the river because they didn't know how to swim. And so they were like, oh no, somebody help Babu. But they didn't even see Babu in the water swimming towards Tutu to help him. And because Babu was really good in swimming, he swam so fast. And then he was so close to Tutu, and then that's when all the other kids, all the other animals looked, and they saw Babu going to rescue Tutu. And then Babu got to Tutu, and he caught Tutu, he held him on one hand, and then Babu started to swim to the shore. He swam to the shore to rescue Tutu. He swam to the shore. He swam so fast that even though Tutu had, he had drunk water because he had been in the water and he didn't know how to swim, and he was drinking water. Babu swam to shore. And then when they got to the beach, Babu started to do first aid on Tutu, and he did mouth to mouth to be able to help Tutu. And then Tutu gained consciousness. Because when he was swimming, he drank a lot of water, and that made him unconscious. But Babu brought him to shore. He did first aid on him, and he saved his life. And everybody was there to see that Babu saved Tutu's life. And everybody started clapping for Babu. And they said, wow, Babu saved his life. Babu saved his life. And like all the other animals in the kingdom, they heard about this story. And even the lion heard about this story about Babu saving Tutu. And then the lion called and he said to his messengers, he said, my messengers, go right now and get me Babu. And then Babu was called in front of the king. And when he came, the king said, Babu, I have heard what you have done, and we are really proud of you. Thank you for saving Tutu. And then the lion told Babu, and he said, from today, you are the lifeguard in the river. And he was given a permanent job to be able to guard the river and help out any other animals. And then from that day, Babu became a hero. And so people even forgot that Babu couldn't speak that well. And then the lion had one thing. He had one surprise. He told Babu, I have heard that some kids make fun of you because of the way you introduce yourself. And he said, I have a surprise for you. From today, the way you introduce yourself will be the national anthem of the animal kingdom. You know what that means? It meant that in every big occasion, everybody would sing this song of Babu introducing himself, and it became the national anthem of that kingdom. And so every time there was a big occasion, all the animals would stand straight and they would say, my name is Babu and I love orange tomatoes, onions, blah, blah, blah. And that became the most famous song in the kingdom. Right? So what's the moral teaching of the story? The moral teaching of the story is, just because you're not good at one thing doesn't mean that you're not good at anything else. Well, you can learn from Babu. Babu didn't do that good in school. Even though he tried his best, he still struggled in school. But Babu was a really good swimmer. And his dad encouraged him and told him that even though he wasn't good in school, he was a really good swimmer. And it was his swimming that made his name be remembered forever and ever. And from that day on, the story is told about Babu the hippo.